Hey, what's up, folks? We are live. Welcome to the VS Code live stream. I'm tidying up my desk area as we speak. With this, look at this, y'all. I made this with my bare hands from my headphones. What do you think? I could have bought one for like $9, but I made one instead. Don't act like you're not impressed. How you doing, chat? Good to see everybody. We got a very good stream for you today. We're going to do a lot. Actually, we were looking at the title of this thing. It's Copilot, it's PowerShell, and it's notebooks, Polyglot notebooks. If you're not sure what Polyglot notebooks are, stick around. We're going to do that. We're going to get right to it and bring our guests on. Before we do that, let's Throwback Thursday. Go ahead.
If you work on multiple projects or languages, then you know that you can quickly rack up a long list of extensions and find yourself toggling between different settings depending on your current workflow. Well, you can now use the Profiles feature in VS Code to customize different setups for all your development scenarios. Right now, I have my custom work and demo profiles, each with their own extensions, settings, shortcuts, and more. Now, I also want a profile that only includes the setup I need for my data science workflow. In the settings menu, I can easily create a profile, and I'm going to create an empty one, but you can also create one from your current profile. For data science, I'm going to need the Python extension pack, which includes the Jupyter extension, as well as the Polyglot Notebooks extension. And I also like to make each profile have a different theme. So I'm going to install the Panda theme and set that for this profile. Now I have my nice clean setup that I can switch to anytime I'm doing data science work. And one of the best parts is that you can import and export profiles, so it's super easy to share your setup with others.
Amazing. Profiles are great, y'all. If you haven't used them, use them. It's kind of like getting a new VS Code setup right out of the box, right? Like you just get a fresh install without reinstalling. Then you can toggle back and forth. What's up, Pavel? Hey, Ahmad. Good to see you. All right, let's bring on Doug. What's up, Doug? Doug Finke is here with us. Doug is an MVP, and that's all I know about you, Doug. And you're on the West Coast. Tell us about yourself.
There you go. Well, thanks for having me on, Burke. This is really exciting today. I've been around the industry for a long time, and I enjoy doing stuff in PowerShell. Wrote a book in PowerShell years ago.
You read a book in PowerShell or on PowerShell?
I wrote a book. I type it the same way, in and on. I always get those mixed up. I wrote it on
books in PowerShell, folks. Yeah.
PowerShell for developers, and I love wiring things up to PowerShell, and especially since it's cross-platform, and you can connect it to pretty much anything. So I've been a developer for a number of years. And just as a quick note, I know we don't have much time, but I actually started in the industry on the mainframe, and I was one of the first people to get a PC on my desk.
Like in the world?
Probably in Manhattan.
Really? What was it? Was that like a trash 80 or something?
Oh no, this was an actual IBM PC. I'm not sure if it was called an XT, but it had a 5.25 inch floppy.
Wow.
And that's how you booted, and it was really expensive to get disk, and it changed. I looked at it and I was like, wow, this is going to change things. And the mainframers were like, it's a toy. And I feel like it's the same thing with AI and ChatGPT. So it's a good set of bookends.
That's awesome. So we should get a link to Doug's book on PowerShell. Doug, let's go ahead and bring up your screen here and we'll get right into it. But cool. Before we do that, are you going to do an introduction, just like a quick, like if you had to describe PowerShell in one sentence, how would you do it?
It's an object-oriented shell and scripting language. It's cross-platform, and it's much different than things like Bash and whatnot. For example, Bash is something that where you pipe text from one command to another, and in PowerShell you can pipe objects from one to another. So it kind of eliminates the parse and pray process. In Bash, you actually have to parse the text, do stuff that you want to it, convert it from, let's say, text to integers, multiply it, convert it back to text, and put it back on the pipeline. So that's my explanation of PowerShell.
Awesome. Well, I'm just a simple JavaScript developer, but I've seen PowerShell. I've used it a little bit, but I know it's a lot of people really like it. What's up, Adnan? Tyrone is here. What's up? What's up, man? And T, what's going on? Thanks for being here. All right, Doug, you got some power. We're gonna start with PowerPoint. We don't see a lot of PowerPoint on the VS Code live stream.
Cool. So I'm just gonna go through a couple of slides, and then the rest of it's demo heavy. So first, I want to just talk about, this whole thing about AI. That's really kind of what I'm talking about here today, in different environments. Embracing the power, right? There's a lot of discussion about doomers and deniers of AI, and I'm looking at it as something that's a skill I need to get involved with. Andre Karpathy, previously a director at AI Tesla, and he's back at OpenAI. He says the hottest new programming language is English. So we're going to look. I'm not going to go deep into prompt engineering today, but you'll see I'll use a bunch of prompts, and it's all about how you talk to them to model and so-called program it. And I like this next statement: AI will not replace you, but a person who knows AI will, because they're going to be able to get superpowers from using this.
Yeah.
So one of the interesting things about ChatGPT, they went to 100 million users in 2 months. And this is just a chart to show things like TikTok, Instagram, Google Translate, how it took 9 to 78 months to get to that amount of users. So it's caught the world on fire in certain ways.
Yeah, fastest growing app in history.
There you go. So, and that says a lot about a lot of things. We won't go deeper on that. So the big thing is warnings. So I don't know how many people know that robot on the side there that comes back in my time. I was on Lost in Space.
Lost in Space. Yeah. Didn't they reboot that? Didn't they make Netflix made a series on that or something?
They rebooted it multiple times, even into certain types of movies. Yep. And always loved that robot. And Danger Will Robinson. And that's the theme about GPT. Don't trust anything that comes out of GPT. Don't push code into production right away. You are responsible for ensuring the quality and reliability of your code. At the end of the day, AI is a tool. So you need to check your automation bias. That's the tendency for humans to favor suggestions from automated decision-making systems. People look at it and go, hey, this looks good. They chuck it into their code and off they go. Don't do that. And
so this is interesting, Doug, because I found that, one of the complaints about AI generated code is that, like, well, you don't know if it's accurate or not. And this is why, folks, you still need to be very versed, right, in your area of study, because the same is true for me. If I know the code well, if I know the language well, then as it's generating, I can quickly move through the suggestions, checking them as it goes. But if I don't know it well, like I was doing Python yesterday, it's very slow. It's hard to know if it's going to work. You got to be an expert. You can't just let the AI be the expert.
That's a great point. Absolutely correct. I can have it generate code in languages that I know, and I can spot issues, and then I can have the conversation with GPT to correct them and to tweak it. But yeah, somebody who doesn't know the language are just going to get code, try it out. It's never going to work, and you get into a really unfortunate cycle. So yeah, that's a great point.
Why use it if you can't trust it? Because it makes you so much faster if you know what you're doing, but it's not going to do your job for you.
Exactly. Totally agree. And kind of to sum all that up, this is not my line, but ChatGPT is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. So you got to stay on your toes, test your code. And this is just not about code, although I think I'll be showing mostly code scenarios today. But this can help you write your markdown files, your documentation, so on and so forth. Even find your favorite restaurants. So the agenda today, we're going to take a look at Polyglot Interactive Notebooks in ChatGPT. Then I'm going to take a look at ChatGPT at your fingertips without leaving the console and using your automation scripts. I've written a PowerShell AI module that integrates ChatGPT to PowerShell. And then sum it all up with, we'll finish with a dime tour of GitHub Copilot and VS Code.
Wow, man, we're touching like every hot area here. PowerShell, notebooks, VS Code, AI, ChatGPT. Like, what other buzzwords can we throw in here to get on the For You page?
Oh man, that's a great question. Throw in everything possible. All right. So let's first talk about, is that big enough or?
Yeah,
good?
I think that's good.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about, this is a IPYNB file. And I'm in the Visual Studio Code, and I have the Polyglot extension installed. And Polyglot Interactive Notebooks, formerly known as .NET Interactive Notebooks. So if you've ever worked with or heard of things like Jupyter Notebooks, this is what that is. So I can do, and what's cool about it is I'm going to be showing PowerShell because they have a kernel for PowerShell usage. I'll click on that. But you can write these cells, do interactive work with C#, F#, HTML, JavaScript, KQL, Mermaid, SQL, etc. So It's a very versatile piece of work and environment. And what's interesting is, for example, this is one type of cell. This is a programming cell, and I'm actually typing PowerShell. I've typed PowerShell in it, and then I can hit the run button, and there's shortcut keys, which I'll use to actually execute that. You can think about this as being at the console, for example, or in a script where you're typing this, pressing enter or pressing the run button. What else is cool about it, though, is up here I have I have some images. So if I double click this, it actually is a markdown cell. And I can put any kind of markdown in here that I want. And then when I click it and render it, it's like having a markdown file preview in Visual Studio Code. I tend to look at notebooks as executable documentation. So you can actually sit here and you can create all kinds of, like, run this cell, you should expect X, Y, Z. You can then do this, this, and this. People use this for incident response as an example, and there's many others. And as you'll see, as I kick this off, OpenAI plus PowerShell, I'm going to load up, for example, this. I'm going to dot source this PS1 file. Shows me how long it took. I had no output, but other cells down below will show output. And what's interesting about
Doug, what are you doing there? Are you just running that file, executing that file?
Yeah, it's called dot sourcing. So I'm loading up that PowerShell file into memory so I can use it in the other cells, because the Visual Studio will actually use whatever I execute. It will be available to the next cell. So that was a good question. Also, if you want to grab my module and play along, you can do an install -module -name PowerShell AI, one word, and you can do what I'm doing here.
And what's in that file you're sourcing?
Good question.
Is that like your key and all that stuff for OpenAI?
Yep. So I'm pulling in my key, which when you download it, it'll show you how to do it. Do a bunch of params, and then I have a bunch of helper functions that actually integrate PowerShell not only with OpenAI, but it also integrates with the Visual Studio Code notebook as well. So I can do certain kinds of operations.
Wow. Your code looks so clean, Doug. I feel ashamed.
Years and years of practice. I've been doing PowerShell for 14 years, I think. I don't even want to admit that. All
right.
Cool.
Let's get back
so
to
that's that. So what I'm going to do is I have a function called get GPT-3 completion. It's also alias to GPT. And what's cool about it, I like, which is why I built it, is I can then extend it by wrapping that function inside another function. And what I'm going to do inside this function is I'm going to, since I'm working with prompts, I'm just going to create a bunch, and prompts are just text, right? So they're English text. I'm going to pass in some stuff to this function, and then I'm going to wrap it in additional text to describe a prompt that I want to pass to GPT. In this case, I'm just going to ask it to translate from whatever I'm going to pass it in. I want to translate, let's say I want to translate from PowerShell or from Python to PowerShell or whatnot. GPT is amazing at translating not only programming languages, but even the spoken language. And we'll show a couple of examples. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just wrapping the GPT piece further to make life easy. So let's try and play with that. So for example, I have a piece of code here in some text, $code. That's a here string in PowerShell. And there's a thing called print hello world. That happens to be Python. And let's say I didn't know how to work with Python. I wanted to convert that from Python. We're going to have a good day.
The demo gods.
It has happened, but I think yes, because I didn't run my next cell, which has that function. Let's try it again. Awesome. So we can see how long it takes.
There we go.
There we go. 3 seconds. And it actually converted the hello world example of Python into PowerShell.
Can you convert it to COBOL?
Let's try. That's a great question. Let's do it right. Python to COBOL. I don't know. I'm gonna say yeah.
What do you think COBOL is? I bet it's like just display. I was gonna say print in all caps, but display.
Good point. And then that's just a display, and that clearly, wow, I have knowledge of COBOL, but there's a whole bunch of scaffolding you need to run a COBOL program. But that's so this is kind of like to start to plant some seeds, what you can do with this, not just with my tool, but you can do this with ChatGPT Web, or you can do it with Copilot. You can start typing in these types of sentences, and then you can say, hey, translate this from, Rust into Go. And then you can give it a snippet of code and you're off to the races. And again, keep your eye on what it gives you because you never know. But what else you can do with it? So the same set of code I'm going to do, same call to convert. I'm going to convert this curl command into a PowerShell command. And I'm steering the model by starting out with, you are an expert at PowerShell. People go, why would you ever want to say that? Well, you can help guide GPT in the conversation by doing some of this kind of work up front. Let's run this, see if I can convert it.
So what model are you using, GPT or DaVinci?
I'm using, under the covers, I'm using, I believe it's DaVinci, and I can look at the code.
So it's a completions model.
Exactly. Gotcha. And on all of the stuff, I have a hyphen model parameter, so you can choose the models you want, and you can build your own chat bots with this and so on. So yeah, this one is particularly DaVinci, so it's instruction based. So I'm telling it what to do. And for those who know PowerShell, you can give me a fact check. This is actually taking that curl command, converting it to a method post. It pulls out the post, pulls out the URI, content types, and it even grabs it. So I'm ready to go. If I wanted to do this into JavaScript, right, I can say curl, and I can just change this to JavaScript. I won't show that, but that's kind of where this is.
Do Fortran. Somebody asked for Fortran. Can you even do this in Fortran?
What do you? Oh, and the curl?
Yeah.
I have no idea. God, I know Fortran too. Formula translation. Let's see what it does. I have no idea. It may never come back. Let's see.
It just goes to lunch. Oh no, it did curl to Fortran.
I have no idea if that's correct.
It looks correct.
That
Look
looks
at all
good
the double colons. Yeah.
That looks good to me. And also I have on here a max tokens. I think I'm setting it initially at 256. So if this is not a long enough Fortran module for, you can bump that up to 1024 or whatever the maximum token size for the model that you're using. Yeah, so Fortran, it works. Awesome. That's why GPT gives you superpowers. What's also cool about GPT is it goes the other way. You can actually give it a piece of code and you can go, hey, I don't know what this does. So I'll run that. I can give it a piece of code and ask it to explain it. And it says, this is a PowerShell function called greet. It takes a single parameter of type string. So you can see that I've actually typed the $name. So it takes that and the function simply prints out the string hello followed by the string parameter that was passed in. This works with any language. So again, I can actually walk, and we'll see some of this stuff in the Copilot. Well, I'm not going to show this in Copilot. I apologize. But to give a little hint, the new stuff, the GitHub Copilot chat is next level. That's all the Copilot X stuff. And they do some really amazing things that you can make this very easy to work with. So you can explain code, you can translate code. Let's see what else we can do. How many people like SQL? I'm not a fan.
Not a fan of SQL. It's fun when it works.
Exactly. And every time I look at my SQL, I look at it and I go, that looks like it's going to work. And then I run it. And it's never the case.
Inner join, outer join, left outer join. One of those is right. Good luck figuring out which one.
Exactly. So I'm going to go to GPT. In this case, I'm going to say, so here's my string, right? $P is going to take this whole string. And for SQL, create a customer table with the following columns. So I take the columns and pass it off to GPT. And this is tough to do this on a Thursday morning. ChatGPT looks a little slow today. And there we have it. So it took that and created looks to me like it's correct SQL to create the table. It figured out from ID, said, oh, looks like you want to do an integer, and we're going to make that a primary key. It even corrects the first name and last name by putting underscores in it, and off it goes. So yeah, it can help there. English to regex.
Super nice, because that's the kind of thing where even when you know SQL, getting the syntax right is such a pain. It would be just much easier to say, hey, create a table that's got these fields in it. I mean, this natural language, that was the statement from Andre, right? The English is the new programming language. Yeah.
English is the hottest new program. And you're absolutely correct. Like, you could be an expert. I could be an expert in PowerShell. I don't have the entire language memorized. I don't know all the different things that are integrated. ChatGPT does, right? Up until 2021. And then there's new features coming out for ChatGPT. So you can bring that. So now I can actually sit there and let it figure out things, and I can eyeball it and go, okay, that looks pretty good, and I don't have to memorize it. And it gets me, it may be wrong, but it gets me 80%, 90%, sometimes 100%. If I only have to figure out 20% of what I'm doing, already I'm more productive. So everybody likes to talk about regex. So let's write a regex matching a URL. That's a minimal effort prompt. Pass that off to GPT, and that's what it comes back with. I'll let other people fact check that. So there's, again, planting seeds about what can you do with GPT.
Just curious.
Yeah.
So one of the challenges is that it confidently gives completely wrong answers. What's your take, Doug? How do you deal with that?
Wow. Well, it's like talking to a human being, right? I know that I've explained things to teammates or colleagues and friends, and I'll talk about technology, and people come back and I think I'm explaining it correct. They think they're hearing it correctly, and they'll give a great answer and go, hey, this is this and this and this. And then it's not until you get into the devils in the details. I look at ChatGPT as being a drunk Copilot. I have to assume that it's going to be wrong, and I cannot have that automation bias. I have to constantly be aware of that. Otherwise, I'm going to copy paste and do something. But I will take something like this, and I will then put it into a unit test, and I'll throw a bunch. And I can even ask it to actually create a unit test for me, and I can ask it to create examples to throw at it. So I can get pretty I can't just go, hey, write a regex matching this, and then I'm off to the races. I got to do some more work.
So the thing, Doug, that's interesting though is that like when you're talking to a human beings, unless you're talking to a pathological liar, they should say, I don't know, or I don't remember, or something like that, right? Whereas the difference with AI is that it just fabricates what it doesn't know. Instead of saying I don't know, it just makes something up and it states it with so much confidence that you have no idea whether or not it's true, right? You can't even tell. It's not even like, well, I think, or it's possible.
Well, that's a great point, but I haven't met a ton of people that I've talked to that like to say they don't know. Everybody likes to have an answer and feel like they know. They like, this is the way it should be. And I can say that using GPT, I have certain modules that I have in PowerShell that I have up on the gallery, and it's on GitHub, and they've been around for a bunch of years, and they're fairly, people like them. And I've actually asked questions about my module saying, how would I use it to do X, Y, and Z? It will fabricate, it will hallucinate is the terminology. It will hallucinate function names that I don't even have.
Yeah.
And the weird part is I look at it and I go, that's a better name than I have. So it's exactly, and it improves it. And like, wow, that's a better readability right there. So it comes back to the box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. So you need to be on. You can't assume. But then again, I mean, I've been in meetings, I've been on scrums and whatnot, and people are very confident about how certain things operate, and they turn out not to be correct.
Yeah, that is true. Humans overestimate their own knowledge of something. What is that? The Dunning-Kruger, where you. And actually, it's the other way, right? The less you know, the more confident you are. And the more you know, the less confident you are, which is 100% true. The more I learn about something, the more I'm like, I think this is the answer. I'm not 100% on this. There's probably edge cases.
And at the end of and that's 100%, I agree with that. And at the end of the day, AI GPT has been trained on human language. So it's picked up, how else is it going to sound?
Yeah.
Except confident about everything since it's learned from human writing.
All right. What else we got here? Yeah.
So just to take it out of the realm of programming, we can even do stuff like list 10 science fiction books. Come on, GPT, you're slowing me down. I don't think I'm going to make the 45-minute mark, but that's okay. So here's a way that you can say list right. So list out 10 science fiction books for me. What's interesting here is I've been playing with this since last November, and even earlier. So they used to have to do stop conditions, but as the models have gotten better and better trained, less of that is needed. So that's another interesting approach. We won't go through deductive reasoning. We'll play with Excel, for example. So here I am. I'm going to say, if a cell A1 is less than 10, show yes. If not, show no. Now, how does it know I'm talking about Excel? I don't know. Third base. but that's an old joke. So
whoa.
it's,
So it deduced that from the. That's pretty interesting.
That's amazing. Now, that is correct. Now I'm going to go the other way and say, well, take that formula and explain it for me, right? And the formula checks for a value in cell 1. It returns yes if the value is less than 10, and no if the value is greater than or equal to 10.
Wow.
Now, when people send me questions for fun and just to play with the models, I will take their questions and pump them into GPT just to see the answers. And it's usually a better formulated answer than I can do. Will do because I'm kind of lazy, right? I'm not going to spell out every little piece. So this is amazing that I can go from, here's my question, there's a solution. I don't even know how I figured out Excel, as I said before. And then I can take something that somebody gives me an example of code, and I can drop it in and see if that all begins to make sense and have a certain kind of conversation with people or myself or whatever. So it's pretty
we're going to do DALL-E text to image? Really?
Of course. We're
All
going to do the whole 9 yards. This one I like. So this is, pay attention to this one. So I'm going to ask it to list the top 5 vegetables and terms, whatever that means.
It's a markdown table. Okay.
But I'm going to, yeah, exactly. So now if I wanted to convert this into a markdown table, I'd have to write a bunch of code. I'm just going to ask GPT to do that. And then I'm going to show you some more capabilities inside of the notebook. So there you have it. It gives me a piece of markdown. And what's really cool is I can copy paste this, make a markdown cell, and I'll put that in. And now I've got a rendered table. Now I use this technique a lot inside of Copilot, which I'm not going to demo today, but I'll talk about a bunch of stuff and I'll say, do it as a markdown table, let Copilot generate it. And I'm in my markdown file. So it's already ready. It's already there and it's rendered. So that's superhuman, right? So, and I can even ask it about the code base I'm working in, because Copilot knows what tabs I have open, and it uses that as a context.
Wow, that's a great use for Copilot. I think I may steal that for some content, Doug. Like, because markdown tables are just a nightmare to work with. I mean, markdown itself is so elegant, and then markdown tables is like the worst possible user experience. I don't understand.
Exactly.
All right.
100%. And when I've stumbled across these things, and other people have, and yeah, once you start to do it, it's like, well, I would never go back. And people go, well, would you pay for this tool? And I'm like, I don't live without it.
Yeah. Once you get into using it and you find all the use cases, you're like, oh gosh, how did we even get by before?
This is like, this is back when we used to see, when snippets came out or auto completion started coming out. We're like, oh my goodness, I can actually look at all the enums on a function and on a parameter. I don't have to look them up. And
or Stack Overflow. I remember when Stack Overflow was popular. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have to search like dozens of forums anymore. The answer's just right there. Oh my gosh.
And GPT is the next level, and it actually consumes Stack Overflow. And on that point, like, I rarely go to Google and I rarely go to Stack Overflow. There might be some esoteric or fringe cases that I need to. It's all here.
But will GPT tell you that your question is stupid like Stack Overflow will?
That's a really excellent question. That is really excellent. And
we love you, Stack Overflow, but I have been accused of asking stupid questions on Stack Overflow before.
Absolutely. And I'm almost suspect of GPT, because I will tell it, like, I'll say, hey, I'm trying to come up with an article on blah, blah, blah. And almost every time GPT comes back and goes, that's a great idea. Let me help you figure that out. And I'm like, you're too positive.
Yeah, what are you doing? That's stupid. I'm not doing this with you. All
exactly. Right. I need some negative feedback. So let's play around with DALL-E. So DALL-E is text to image. What we saw before here is it's text to code, text to markdown, so on and so forth. So they have an API. So I wrap that in PowerShell, of course, and I make it so you can actually display it inside of the notebooks, which is
DALL-E OpenAI?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So DALL-E is all part of that.
That was Google for some reason.
No, they have their own, but OpenAI has DALL-E, and yeah. So now, when I said cat in the hat, it didn't go out and find a picture of a cat in the hat. It composed it. Now, what's really cool is just to show the way prompt engineering works. So I want a bird in a top hat with a cane. I want to use the Unreal Engine. I want a marble sculpture, and I want it to look like as if MC Escher did it. So that's what it comes up with. So yeah, that's like, well, how do you get that? Where do you find that information? How do I debug that? How do I know to even specify that stuff? Well, that's what prompt engineering is all about. That's why things are changing. This is not about programming $A equals $1, $B equals 2, and then printing out a $A plus $B. It's a little different. It's the next level. And this is just, again, to plant some seeds. And
so
that's,
Doug, the biggest applicability I can see for things like DALL-E to engineers, like myself, is like creating things, logos and things that I can't do because I'm not a very good designer, right? And this is one of the places where I feel like DALL-E just falls down, is if I need, like, just create me like a simple logo for a website about shoes, right? And it can't do that. And I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree, and it's ever evolving. And this is also using the not the latest version of DALL-E. They haven't pushed it out to the APIs yet. And I totally agree. And in fact, if you ask it to do humans, often you'll see humans without, and if it includes hands, it can't do all the fingers. It'll add one, it'll take one away, and you get into really unusual spaces. But Stable Diffusion and Midjourney have taken that to the next level. And
yeah, Midjourney is quite good at this. Yeah.
Yes. So, and DALL-E's up and coming in that whole space, and you can wrap the Midjourney pieces as well. So yeah, it's an evolving space, and right now you can do some cool stuff that looks like fun. I'll often do this kind of stuff and generate images for my blog posts, so just for fun. But yeah, I've seen people try to do this for marketing material, and they have a kind of a rough time getting it to work.
Yeah, somebody had posted, I posted it to Twitter with this image of AI taking your job, right? And it's a bunch of handshakes, and the hands have like 20 fingers on them, because AI is just so bad with some things, like hands. Eyes is another one that it can't get right for some reason. It's really funny.
It's interesting that they've trained this, and training something like DALL-E takes months and months and months, and then it has the reinforcement capabilities with human feedback, and it still has an issue. So it kind of shows us where we are with the AI space. But going back to that original chart that ChatGPT had 100 million users in 2 months, we've had GPT-3 and GPT 3.5 and 4 within the last 3 months. GTP-5 is on the horizon. This space is moving ridiculously fast. So we'll see where it goes.
Really good. Have y'all seen, Chad? Have y'all seen the beer commercial that was AI generated? Have y'all seen that?
Oh,
have you seen it, Doug?
Yeah. Very cool stuff.
Yeah, I wish I had a link to it. It's hilarious. But anyway, let's keep going.
That's a good point too, because NVIDIA and all these other companies and Adobe are going in really hard on AI, and even NVIDIA has like text to 3D, text to animation, and they're starting to look at, I think Hollywood is actually doing all kinds of stuff with AI for their next set of movies. So we know this space is going to just rapidly improve. All right, so let's let me see, because we're already at 11:30. But I do have something called MB Copilot that I wrote. Again, it integrates GPT, and it integrates notebooks. And let's just do so here I'm going to say, MB Copilot, write a PowerShell core function, just the function, no explanation, do not show how to use it, that will show a date and time. So that's pretty easy. So not only does it generate it and it finished, but it also then inserts it into the notebook itself.
Oh, nice.
I can actually run it. And if I actually call it, I can say get time, actually see if I can see if it works. So now here's another way that I use it. Like, hey, I don't know how to get take time, obviously is a simple example, but as I get more complex, I can actually have it inject right inside my notebook and be ready to run and test it. Let's see if we can do, I'm going to take, let's do KQL. So you can actually ask it to give me a sample KQL query. So that's stuff that we use on Azure, for example, to look at App Insight logs and do all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, what is that? What do they call it? Custo?
Custo query language, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's some Custo. And it actually gives me explanations and whatnot. And I can sit here, tweak it, copy, paste it, and make sure it works. So there's all, and again, right? So this is KQL. So this is a kernel that exists. This KQL exists and works inside of the notebook. So I can actually generate KQL and run it and be ready to go. And I can show the same examples to do JavaScript, Mermaid, and so on. So that's 1/3 of my demo.
We're 33% of the way there.
So I don't know if we're going to make it. So let me just show you a couple of more things that I think are cool about. Let's go to. I'm going to use something called. So inside of notebooks, they also have they have a plotting tool, but I decided I was going to try and integrate my own something called Scott Plot. And it's the similar concepts, just different kind of graphics. And I like it because I can then use that outside of the notebook, and I can use it in my PowerShell scripts, etc. So again, I have my helper file, and I run that. And here I can actually say, well, create 3 different plots. I want to create a bubble plot, scatter plot, and a bar plot. Once again, my show Scott plot in notebook helps me, so I can actually, when I generate the image, I can actually display it inside of here. And Scott plot's kind of nice. It's got tons of different, it's got signal charts, right? So you can do all kinds of cool stuff. I think that
This
actually
looks
just
a lot like Matplotlib. It looks very similar.
Exactly. So if you're familiar with Matplot, this is also, again, the reason I chose it was that I could, Matplot lives in Python. At the moment, Polyglot Notebooks doesn't support Python. It's coming. And and I can also use this outside of the notebook environment to generate graphs and whatnot. And the cool part was that just created 1 million random points. And that's how quick it is. So I'll generate again. That's 1 million points plotted. And that was all using, well, it was using PowerShell, but it was using the Scott Plot C# DLL. And the examples go on and on and on, which is really cool. And the one
Show
last
us some. Yeah, do some more.
Oh, okay. Let's play with a histogram. There we go. And I can clear the outputs, right? So that's what's cool. I can clear the outputs, rerun it. I can make tweaks to the code. In addition, when I save this, I can actually give the IPYNB file. I can put it up as a gist. I can put it in my GitHub, or I can email it to a coworker, a friend, or family. And when they open it, they'll see all the stuff generated, ready to go.
Yeah.
Right?
So somebody had asked that. They're like, where can you play with these notebooks online? So yeah, well, you can publish them as gist, right? But they will display statically, right? So basically render. If you actually want to play with it, code spaces would be the way to go, right?
You got it. Code spaces is exactly the way. It's all supported in code spaces. Yeah. So if you want to interact with
Code Spaces is free for everyone, y'all. I think you get like 30 hours or something every month, which is a lot. Exactly. So yeah, if you're not using it, use it. It's free. It's there.
It's free. Absolutely worth it. When you go to github.dev and you get the Visual Studio Editor, when you can take a repo, you can hit the dot on your keyboard. It opens up that repo in Visual Studio Dev that uses containers and whatnot. And then that's, I think, is underlying all the code space stuff as well. Yeah. So if you don't want to install all this stuff, off you go to the code spaces and you're good to go.
Yeah, that's exactly right. All right.
All right. You want to go to the command line?
Let's do command line. Let's do it.
All right. So let me. What, I got 6 minutes. I'm out.
It's all right if we go a little over.
Okay. So now let's bring up some PowerShell. Nope, that's not what I want. Okay. So here we have some PowerShell interface, and I'm gonna do a get module. So that's the module I have it installed locally. I'm already up to 0.7. I'm not a full release yet, but it's very stable. Bunch of contributors. Highly recommend using it. So first up, I have something called a enable AI shortcut key. So that allows me to do shortcut keys and to get certain kinds of activity or output. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a comment, and I'm going to say, what is my IP address? I'm going to hit Control-Shift-G. That's actually communicating with GPT. And I have this a little tuned for knowing it's PowerShell. And so in there, I have something like, you're a PowerShell expert. And then I append the what is my IP address to that prompt. And it tells me, here's how you get your IP address. So now, so by doing the Control-Shift-G on a comment, I get a response, and then I'm ready to execute it straight away in console. We can do another example. Let's list all the markdown files. Oops, Control-Shift-G. And that is correct. Get child item, that's dir or ls. And if those markdown files end with a MD, kind of amazing. I won't run that. So let's see what else it can do. So I have if you don't want to use the shortcut keys or you want a little more control, I can use the GPT function. And I can say, for example, translate hello to Spanish, French, and Korean. And there you go. And I can go beyond hello. I can say hello world. I can add my name, a whole bunch of different things. Oh, actually, my next example.
Well, that's really nice. You can interface with GPT right from the terminal.
Yep, never have to leave. And the cool part is since I'm in a shell, so there we go. Hello, my name is Doug. And I translated it to 3 languages. And if I wanted to, I can actually say clip, right? And then it'll do it. And it actually then puts it on the clipboard for me. And it's all going to be wrong, but let's do it this way so it's better, so we can see it better. I put that all up on the clipboard so I can actually interact with the command line, put things on a clipboard, save it to a file, on and on and on. So I don't have to sit in ChatGPT web. I can do everything right here in my console. Now, back to SQL, because I love SQL. What if I wanted to do SQL to calculate total sales by month? Let's see what it tells me. Now, this is great. Like if I'm stuck and I want to brainstorm, this is somehow I start initially and I start asking questions. And GPT comes back and says, well, you can do this. Now, if I wanted to say, what if I wanted to get the total number of signups? Oops, let's get the copy paste right. Total number of signups in the last 30 days. Yeah, SQL's easy. So I can start brainstorming with it around a whole bunch of different things. And again, we're not limited to translating languages or using SQL. I can ask KQL questions. Remember, GPT is the culmination of the corpus of text in the planet. And I can I'm not going to try it now, but I wonder if I said do that SQL, but how Shakespeare would say it, it might actually come out with something. Now I have another function called AI. So it's the same thing. It wraps GPT, and I'll show you what the difference is. So I'm going to ask here, list of planets, only names is JSON. Now that looks good, right?
Oh,
that looks like,
yeah.
Now let's go kick it up a notch. I'm going to do the same thing. Now here's the.
How's this different from the GPT function?
That's what I'm just about to show you. Good question. Here we go. So now, oops, let's try it again. So now I'm going to do the same. So notice on the left-hand side, I'm saying, get me a list of planets. So we know it's going to go do the JSON. But then I'm going to pipe that output from GPT or from ChatGPT, and I'm going to pipe it into another and say, now convert it to XML. So I'm going to make true round trips. So you'll see thinking recycle back to 0. Here we go. That's the second call. So now I'm asking it to get it in for JSON for whatever reason, and then I can pipe it back into AI, and I can convert it to XML. Now,
so
you may want. Yeah,
that looks like LangChain to me, or like semantic kernel, right? Like it's like an agent, but except for you're giving it the steps to take instead of it figuring out itself.
So it's really great talking to you, Burke. I love it. Oh, and I didn't do the stuff correctly. So this is the box of chocolates, but you're exactly correct. LangChain and AutoGPT. This is in that direction, but that LangChain is far more involved, and I'll be producing some more pieces on that. But that is the general direction of thinking. That is correct.
So the LangChain stuff's super interesting. I've been messing with it, chat, yesterday, trying to figure it out. And so my wife owns a small business, and it's very small. She doesn't make a lot, but she has orders that come in. And I took that CSV file and I was using LangChain to see if I could just ask questions, right? Like what were sales from 2023 or what month had the most orders, right? And so I was doing that just in the morning. Last night, I got an email from OpenAI saying, hey, you've hit your warning API limit of $5. And I'm like, how many times is LangChain calling the OpenAI API? I think it's a bunch, because when you ask an open-ended question, it's basically just going in a circle, right? It has like a thought, and it's like, well, I need to convert this column to a date time, and then I need to do this, I need to do that. So the thing that my thought last night was, I was like, this is untenably expensive to use.
Well, you got to pay to play, but you're exactly correct. And So I pay $20 a month for ChatGPT Web, and in the GPT-4, I can enable the browser and I can enable plugins. So when I
you get
enable
plugins access.
exactly. So when I also have access to the SDK in building plugins, which is a whole nother discussion. When that's awesome. But by doing the GPT browse with Bing, I can ask it a question. It will go out to the Bing search engine multiple times in a single query. So yes, you can, but it's not going to be as expensive as you think. Remember, you pay per 1,000 tokens, and a token is not a word, right? So about 750 words fit into 1,000 tokens. And depending on the model that you're using, it's going to range between like a fraction of a penny for those 1,000 tokens. And then you have to pay for the tokens coming back. So it is expensive. And I'm sure LangChain is doing tons and tons of, what did it come back with? Is it correct? Let's go out and ask these questions. Let's update the prompt and go do further investigation.
Oh, so it's the token size that's costing me money.
Mm-hmm,
well,
exactly.
That sounds like you got to utilize embedding. Yes, but you can't, at least in my experience, you can't embed a CSV, right? It's not text. So you can't, you could do like an FAI SS,
Right.
indexing on it, but then it ends up doing like weird answers where it's like, I don't know, you only gave me 4 rows. I don't know what your answer is. And that's because, or maybe I'm wrong, Sam. Tell me I'm wrong.
You're on the right track. And what's interesting is, for example, there's this thing called a LinkedIn Reader in GPT-4 in the web as a plugin. And basically you can tell, I sit down and I can tell it, read this CSV file from this GitHub repo and let's do analysis on it. So that's coming. That's kind of here. You have to pay for it. And it's on its way, but that's the general, again, the trending direction of what this is doing and where it's going. And that's why LangChain is really cool in that way. But yeah, it could be expensive and the prices are coming. In fact, the recent release of the Turbo 3.5 models, I think they reduced the price significantly.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, it's less, and that's what I was using with 3.5 turbos. So if it was GPT-4, it was still, because I think because it's sending that whole CSV file, it must be trying to send that whole file over to OpenAI, and I don't know. It seems like there's a better, like, I don't know how we do this, right?
That's a great question. I mean, so then the chat model, so it has context and memory, so to speak, air quotes. The chat model is you're basically sending the entire conversation up as it gets appended to every time. So you can actually run out of token space. And LangChain, what it does, it also measures how much tokens you have sent and received, how big it is already, and then what model you're talking to, and it will adjust the prompt based on the token max. But yes, you're paying for what goes up and what comes back. But again, you're on fractions of the dollar. And I think Anthropic just came out with 100,000 tokens you can send. That's like 5 hours of reading material that any human can do. So,
but like if you're like Doug, if you're a developer and you're saying, because it seems to me like the first thing everybody's going to want to do is, I want ChatGPT, cool. I want to do it on my own data set, right? I got a database with every order that we get every day for a legitimate business that's, thousands of orders a day. I want to be able to just give this to like our customer support. So when people call in, customer support can just ask and get an answer back. The problem is, like, how in the world do you get ChatGPT to go over that massive data set? You can't send the whole thing. So what do you do?
Great question. And that kind of harkens back to the mainframe days, right? You can't sort a million social security numbers, because back in the day they didn't really have magnetic disk, right? You had to do it all on tape, right? So you have to do a concept called chunking, right? So initially, maybe the one way you would approach it is you'd actually every night, like we did back in the OLAP and the OLAP days, right? Where you would actually say, oh, I'm not going to update my multi-million rows. I'm just going to update the changes from yesterday. You might build a bunch of embeddings about the new data that came in, right? After you did the entire first sweep of all your data. And then you say, okay, every night I'm going to add this stuff as embeddings. And when somebody comes in with a question, you'll search the embeddings to find the most relevant hits. And then you would take just that subset of text from the indexes into the database, and you would send that up as the prompt. So it's not for free. It's not a silver bullet. And for that kind of stuff that you're talking about, that's the next level of what you got to do. Does that make sense?
So yeah, definitely. So daily push is like, you got to, the anonymized, look, daily push, look, You got to come on the live stream and show me how to do this. You up for that? Show everybody how to do it.
There's some up for it. Absolutely. And these are great questions. And this is exactly, you look at all the hype around AI and you go, oh, it's going to take my job. Not really. And if you, depending on context size of your token limits, you have to start coming up with whole different models of how to make this stuff work. So
awesome. All right. Well, Doug, we're a little over time. I know you've got more. I think we're going to have you back to do more ChatGPT stuff. And I think it would be cool for us to do another stream, maybe on like, let's build a chatbot on your SQL data source or your CSV file. If you're up for that, maybe using Azure Search, possibly. I think that would be the way to go, but I'm just guessing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And maybe we start with a small data set so we can get some cool results. And then
I've got one. I think my wife's data set has like 2,200 rows in it, right? Like It's not very big. And
perfect.
So awesome. Well, y'all check out Doug's book. First of all, buy Doug's book. If you don't own Doug's book and you use PowerShell, what are you doing? Buy Doug's book. What else, Doug?
Definitely follow me on Twitter, DFINKE. I'm on there all the time, and I talk about this, and I talk about the releases I do with different modules, including the ChatGPT, and there's more to come. So, and then we can I love to answer questions and interact. So it'll be great.
Awesome. Make sure you follow Doug. We will have Doug back to do more AI GPT stuff. This was amazing. We have got to do this again. This is great. Thank you so much. Thank you, chat. Hey, if you want to come back here in 2 hours, 1 hour, we're going to do our Blazor stream and try to make some more progress in our app today. We will see you back there. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, chat.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.